My brother, the favorite son, always had everything. An Ivy League scholarship fully paid for, a brand new BMW when he turned 17, and by 21, a guaranteed position in our father's company. During a family barbecue, he overheard me casually mention that I had just bought my third property, and he completely lost it. He threw his drink across the yard, my mom burst into tears, and that's when my grandfather said something that made everyone go silent. I got used to being the background character in my own family. Ryan was the story everyone wanted to tell. The scholarship, the car, the perfect jawline, the girlfriend who called my mom second mom. I played along because that's what you do when you're the daughter who doesn't want to cause trouble. But things changed when I started working for myself. I wasn't supposed to do better than Ryan. Not financially, not emotionally, not in any way. Yet somehow, I did. Slowly, quietly, I built something that was mine. 3 small properties. Nothing huge, but enough to make me feel safe for the first time in my life. The day everything exploded was a Sunday barbecue at my parents' house. The kind where everyone wears pastel colors and pretends to be fine. Ryan had just arrived in his new suit. He never misses a chance to look like a magazine cover, and I was sitting near the grill talking to our cousin about interest rates. I mentioned casually that I'd closed on my third property the week before. I didn't mean it as a flex. It just slipped out. Ryan froze. I could see his smile fade like someone had unplugged it. He asked what I meant, and I said, "Just a small rental place in Denver." Next thing I knew, he tossed his drink across the yard. The glass shattered near the patio. Everyone stopped. Mom gasped and ran toward him like he'd been shot. Dad shouted his name, but Ryan just glared at me, like I'd stolen something sacred. Mom started crying, saying something about how I didn't need to make him feel small. Ryan muttered under his breath that I'd probably cheated my way into everything I owned. And then Grandpa, who rarely spoke at all, stood up from his chair and said something that froze the air. He looked straight at Ryan and said, "You should be careful throwing tantrums about money that isn't yours." The yard went dead silent. Even the grill stopped sizzling. Mom whispered, "Dad, what are you talking about?" Grandpa didn't answer. He just stared at me, not Ryan, like there was something he wanted to say but couldn't yet. And in that moment, I realized that the balance in our family had just shifted, and I had no idea why. No one spoke for a full minute after Grandpa said that. It was like the air got heavier, thick with something that didn't belong at a family barbecue. Ryan looked pale, Mom's hands were shaking, and even Dad, who usually brushed off any kind of drama, looked like he didn't know where to stand. I tried to laugh it off. I asked Grandpa what he meant, half expecting him to make one of his weird old man jokes, but he didn't. He just looked at me again, his eyes a little sad this time, and said, "Ask your father." Then he went back to cutting his ribs like he hadn't just thrown a grenade into our family. I turned to Dad, but he avoided my eyes. He told everyone to sit down, said Ryan was just tired, that we should all eat before the food got cold. Nobody bought it. Ryan stormed inside, slamming the screen door so hard the frame rattled. Mom followed him, crying. The rest of us sat there, pretending to chew, while Grandpa quietly finished his meal. Every sound felt too loud. The crunch of his fork, the rustle of napkins, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. When I finally went inside, Ryan was pacing the kitchen, saying things like, "She doesn't deserve any of this," and "You said I'd get it first." Mom kept telling him to lower his voice, but he didn't care. When he noticed me standing there, he stopped talking. The silence that followed felt personal. He just glared and said, "You have no idea what's going on." He was right. I didn't. But the way Mom looked at me, scared, like I'd stumbled onto something dangerous, told me this wasn't just about money. I went home early that night. I told them I was tired, but the truth was, I couldn't stand the way they were looking at me, like I'd broken some rule I didn't even know existed. The next morning, Grandpa called me. His voice was rough, like he hadn't slept. He said, "Emily, come by the house." Alone. When I got there, he was sitting on the porch with a box on his lap, a small wooden one, old enough that the hinges looked rusty. He didn't say much, just handed it to me and said, "Whatever happens next, don't blame yourself." Inside was a folder, yellowed, wrinkled, with my name on it, and below it, in handwriting I recognized instantly, was Dad's signature. I didn't open it right away. I couldn't. Grandpa looked like he wanted to say more, but he just sighed and whispered, "Your father made a choice years ago, one that Ryan was never supposed to find out about." I asked him what kind of choice, but he only shook his head and said, "He'll deny it if you ask. But that folder, it's yours now." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Ryan's outburst, Dad's silence, and the way Mom kept glancing at Grandpa during dinner, like she was begging him not to talk. By 2 a.m., I gave up trying to rest and finally opened the folder. The first page made my stomach drop. It was a legal document, not the technical kind, just a short statement saying that when I was 6 years old, Dad had put a large investment in my name, something about a trust. But the date didn't make sense. It was signed 2 weeks after Ryan was born. I stared at that paper until my eyes blurred. My name, written in my father's careful handwriting, the date, the signature, and then a line that made my whole body go cold. Beneficiary, Emily Ann Crawford. I didn't know what it meant exactly, but I understood one thing. It was big. The kind of big that made my brother's rage make sense. I tried calling Grandpa again, but he didn't answer. I thought about calling Dad, but I knew he'd lie. That's what he did when things got uncomfortable. He'd say I was imagining things, that it was just a formality, or some other half-truth to shut me up. By morning, I drove straight to my parents' house. Mom opened the door wearing her robe, looking like she hadn't slept either. She started to say something, but I just held up the folder. She froze. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice tight. "Grandpa gave it to me," I said. "He said Dad made a choice." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She just stared at me like I'd said something impossible. Then she whispered, "He wasn't supposed to," and stopped. I could hear Dad's footsteps coming from the kitchen. He looked at the folder in my hand and his whole face changed. Not anger, fear. He asked where I'd found it, but I didn't answer. I just asked him the question that had been eating me alive all night. Why would you put something in my name when I was 6? He didn't speak right away. He just sank into a chair, rubbing his face. Finally, he said, "It wasn't supposed to matter anymore. It was just protection." "Protection from what?" I asked. He looked at Mom, then at the floor. "From your brother." That made no sense. Ryan had been a baby. What could anyone need protection from? Dad sighed, and for the first time in my life, he looked smaller than I remembered, tired, cornered, almost ashamed. "When you were little," he said, "Grandpa insisted that every grandchild have something set aside, but Ryan, he didn't want his future tied to anyone else's decisions. He wanted everything for himself, even back then, so Grandpa gave the main stake to you instead." I felt dizzy. "So you're saying, what, that I own something he thought was his?" Dad nodded. "Half the company, at least on paper." Grandpa never told him. That's when it clicked. The trust wasn't about money. It was about control. Ryan had spent his whole life believing he'd inherit everything. The company, the legacy, the spotlight. And now, without knowing it, I'd been the one holding the keys all along. I wanted to laugh, but all I felt was this heavy guilt pressing down on me. I didn't even want the company. I just wanted peace. Mom tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. "Does Ryan know?" I asked. Dad's silence told me everything. That night, Ryan showed up at my apartment. No warning, no knock, just banging on the door until I opened it. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair a mess, and he looked like he hadn't slept either. He didn't yell right away. He just said, "You had to ruin everything, didn't you?" I told him I didn't even know what everything meant, but he didn't care. He said Grandpa had told him the truth, that half of his inheritance was under my name, and then he said something that made my stomach twist. He was supposed to change it back before he died. Before he died. Grandpa wasn't dead. Not yet. At least, he wasn't yesterday. When Ryan said those words, "before he died," something inside me snapped. I didn't even wait to argue. I grabbed my keys and ran. Ryan shouted after me, but his voice sounded far away, like background noise. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone trying to call Grandpa. No answer. I tried again, straight to voicemail. The drive to his house felt endless. Every red light, every slow car in front of me, it all made my chest tighten. I kept picturing him on the porch, waiting for me like before. But when I finally pulled into his driveway, his car was still there, and the lights inside were off. I knew before I even knocked that something was wrong. The door was unlocked. Grandpa always locked his doors, even when he was inside. The living room was dark, except for the TV flashing a silent news channel. His glass of iced tea was still on the table, half full. I called out his name. Nothing. Then I saw him, slumped in his armchair, his hand resting on that same wooden box he'd given me. He wasn't moving. I felt my throat close up. I ran to him, tried shaking his shoulder, saying his name over and over, but the stillness was different this time. Final. I called 911, but deep down I already knew. When the paramedics came, They said it looked like a heart attack. They spoke softly, almost gently, like I was a child again. I just nodded, staring at the wooden box still sitting there like some kind of cruel symbol. The officer asked if there was anyone they should call for me. I said no. I didn't want Ryan here. I didn't want anyone. After they left, I sat on the floor beside the chair, the silence pressing against me. There was something under the box, a folded envelope with my name written on it. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a short letter. Emily, I never meant for this to fall on you, but your father needed someone he could trust. You've always been the quiet one, the steady one. Ryan. He lost himself in the idea of what he thought he deserved. If he finds out the truth before you're ready, leave. Don't argue. Don't try to fix it. Just leave. Love, Grandpa. I read it 3 times before it sank in. He knew this would happen, and Ryan had found out. I drove home in a daze. My phone buzzed the entire time. Missed calls, texts, all from Ryan. I didn't read any of them. When I got home, I locked every door and sat on the floor with the letter in my lap. By morning, the news had spread. Grandpa's passing, the family's statement, all the fake sympathy flooding social media. But the worst part was seeing Ryan's post, a smiling photo of the 2 of them with the caption, "He promised me everything." The comments were full of condolences and praise for him, the grieving grandson. Not a single mention of me. That afternoon, Mom called. Her voice was trembling. She said, "Please, don't make this harder than it already is." I asked her what she meant, and she said quietly, "Ryan's asking for the documents, the ones Grandpa gave you." I almost laughed. He can't be serious, but she didn't laugh. "Your father thinks it's better if you just give them to him. It'll keep the peace." Peace. That word again. The one they used every time I was supposed to stay quiet and let Ryan win. I told her no. That's when she whispered something I'll never forget. "Then be careful, Emily. He's not himself right now." When the call ended, I realized my front door camera light was blinking. Motion detected. Someone was outside. The blue light on my door camera kept flashing. For a second, I just froze, staring at it like maybe if I stayed still enough, whoever was out there would go away, but it didn't stop. I checked my phone. The camera app opened to a grainy image. Someone standing at the edge of the porch, too close to the lens. I could see the shape of a jacket, the shine of wet shoes, but not the face. Then the person leaned closer. It was Ryan. He looked calm. Too calm. He lifted his hand and knocked softly, like we were kids again, and he'd come over to borrow something, but there was nothing normal about the way he was smiling. I didn't open the door. I just said, loud enough for the camera to pick it up, "Ryan, you need to go home." He didn't move. "I just want to talk," he said. His voice sounded flat, practiced. "You've got something that doesn't belong to you." I told him Grandpa left everything fair and square. He laughed. A short, sharp sound that didn't reach his eyes. "You think he did this to be fair? He did it to punish me." He stepped closer, and the motion light turned on, flooding his face. His eyes were red, not from crying, from fury. "Ryan," I said quietly, "you need to leave before this gets worse." He didn't. He pressed his hand against the door, like he wanted to feel me through it. "You think you deserve his legacy?" He whispered. "You, the one who never even wanted to be part of this family business? He wasted it on you." Something about his tone made my stomach twist. I realized he didn't want the papers. He wanted to hurt me for having them. I called out that I was recording him, that the cameras were on. He smirked and said, "You think I care?" Then he stepped off the porch and disappeared into the dark. I waited 10 minutes before I even moved. Every sound outside made me jump. When I finally looked at my phone again, there were new messages, all from Mom. "He's angry. Don't be alone tonight. He's saying things he shouldn't. Please stay somewhere else. Emily, answer me." I packed a bag and left. Drove without thinking, just needed distance. Ended up at a cheap motel off the highway, the kind with flickering lights and vending machines that never work. That night, I kept replaying everything in my head. Grandpa's warning, Dad's silence, Ryan's words, and underneath it all, this growing fear that maybe Grandpa hadn't told me everything. Because in his letter, he'd said, "If he finds out before you're ready, leave. But leave where? For how long? Ready for what?" I pulled out the envelope again, hoping I'd missed something. At the bottom of the folder was another folded sheet, one I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't a letter. It was a photocopy of a will. At first, I thought it was Grandpa's, but when I read the top line, my hands went cold. It was my father's will. And next to primary heir, there was my name, not Ryan's. I didn't even have time to process it before my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. A man's voice said, "Miss Crawford, this is Officer Neal from the Denver Police Department. We need you to come in for a few questions regarding an incident at your parents' residence." My chest tightened. "What happened?" He paused before saying, "It's about your brother." The drive to the police station felt like a blur of lights and static. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. I kept replaying that one sentence. "It's about your brother." I didn't know if I was about to hear that he'd been arrested, hurt, or worse. When I walked into the station, the fluorescent lights made everything look too sharp, too clean. The officer who'd called me, Neil, met me near the front desk. He had that kind of face people use when they're about to say something they know will ruin your day. He led me to a small room. Not quite an interrogation room, but close. A metal table. 2 chairs. He didn't sit right away. "Miss Crawford," he started carefully, "there was an incident at your parents' house late last night. Your brother was found in the driveway around 3 a.m. My throat went dry. "Is he? He's alive," Neil said quickly. "But he's in the hospital. It looks like he lost control of his car and hit one of the trees near the front gate." I let out a shaky breath. "Oh my God." He hesitated before continuing. "Your parents told us you'd left after an argument with him earlier that evening." "It wasn't an argument," I said. "He showed up at my place and he wasn't himself. He was angry, but I didn't fight with him." Neil nodded slowly, jotting something down in his notebook. "Was he drinking? Using anything?" "I don't know," I said. He said some strange things about our grandfather's will. That made him look up." "The will?" I almost regretted mentioning it, but it was too late. "It's complicated. My grandfather passed away yesterday. There's been tension in the family. Money stuff." Neil leaned back. "Your father mentioned that too." That made me pause. "My father's here?" "He was earlier," the officer said. "He and your mother came to give a statement. They were both upset. He told us your brother was under a lot of stress. Said he's been fixated on some inheritance issue." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it sounded so normal when he said it. Inheritance issue. Like this was just some spoiled family drama. After a few more questions, Neil finally told me I could go. But before I left, he said something that stuck with me. "For what it's worth, your father seemed more worried about you than about your brother. That shouldn't have made me nervous, but it did." On my way out, I called the hospital to ask about Ryan. They said he was in stable condition but sedated. Head trauma, some bruised ribs, nothing fatal. I almost felt relieved, until the nurse added, "Your parents are with him now." I didn't go. I couldn't. Instead, I drove to Grandpa's house again. The police tape was still across the porch. I stood outside for a long time before slipping around to the back. I don't even know why. Maybe I just needed to feel close to him. In the back shed, the air smelled like dust and motor oil. I found some old boxes, probably untouched for years. Inside one of them was a pile of papers tied with string. On top was a photograph of my dad and Grandpa shaking hands in front of the family company building. Behind them in the background was Ryan. He couldn't have been more than 15. He was glaring at them. Underneath the photo was a letter addressed to my father, dated over a decade ago. "You can't keep protecting him forever. If Ryan ever learns the truth, he'll destroy everything you've built. You have to tell Emily before it's too late." No signature. My stomach dropped. Whoever wrote that? It wasn't Grandpa. The handwriting was too neat, too formal, and at the bottom, in tiny print, was a company letterhead, Crawford Holdings, our own company. And in the corner, just above the logo, a single word I didn't recognize. Acquisition. The word acquisition kept spinning in my head all the way back to my car. I sat there with the letter in my lap, reading it over and over. It wasn't a personal note. It looked like something from a file that had been hidden, maybe years ago. And the tone, so cold, so deliberate, didn't sound like anything my family ever said out loud. At home, I laid everything out on the kitchen table. Grandpa's note, the trust papers, the will, and now this. They didn't line up. It felt like pieces of 2 different puzzles that someone had forced together. My phone buzzed again. Mom. I almost ignored it, but something in me said to pick up. Her voice was shaky. "Emily, your brother's awake." For a second, I didn't say anything. "He's asking for you," she whispered. "He says he knows everything now." I told her I wasn't coming. I didn't want another scene, but before I could hang up, she said, "Please, he's not angry this time. He's Scared. That word stopped me. When I got to the hospital, the nurse led me to Ryan's room. The blinds were drawn, machines humming softly. He looked smaller, fragile even, with bandages on his forehead. When he saw me, he smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. He said, "You were right to be afraid." I didn't know how to respond. I asked what he meant, and he turned his head toward the window. Grandpa didn't do this to me. Dad did. He gestured to the chair next to him, and I sat. His voice was low, almost like he didn't want anyone else to hear. After the crash, Dad came to see me. Before the doctors even finished checking me, he said the company's not really ours. Hasn't been for years. I frowned. What are you talking about? He looked at me, eyes hollow. The acquisition. Crawford Holdings was sold off piece by piece over a decade ago. Grandpa fought it, but Dad pushed it through in secret. Said it was to protect us from taxes, from risk, but that wasn't the reason. He swallowed hard. He used your name, Emily. That's what the trust was. You didn't just inherit money. You were listed as a silent owner on the papers, so the deals couldn't be traced back to him. If anyone ever looked too closely, it would all fall on you. I felt my chest tighten. That doesn't make sense. He wouldn't. He would, Ryan said. And he did. Grandpa found out. That's why he kept everything in your name after. He was trying to fix what Dad had done. The room started spinning. All those years, I thought Dad's favoritism toward Ryan was unfair. I thought he'd just ignored me. But now it made sense. Keeping me at a distance wasn't neglect. It was strategy. Ryan leaned back against the pillow, his breathing uneven. He told me last night before I left their house. Said I should stop chasing what doesn't exist. I didn't understand. Then he said you'd figure it out soon enough. I couldn't breathe. Why are you telling me this? He looked at me, his expression softer now, almost pitying. Because when he realizes Grandpa left you those papers, he's not going to let you keep them. He'll make you disappear before he lets anyone see what's inside. I stood up, my legs shaking. Ryan's hand caught my wrist, weak but desperate. Emily, he's not who you think he is. When I left the hospital, it was raining hard. My phone buzzed again. Another call from Dad. I didn't answer. But as I got into my car, I saw headlights flash behind me. A black sedan parked across the street, engine running. It didn't move when I pulled out. It just followed. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Just another car heading the same way. But when I turned right at the light, it turned too. When I slowed down, it slowed down. The road was slick from the rain, headlights flashing across the wet asphalt. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. I didn't want to believe my own brother's warning. But Ryan had been right about everything else. I took another turn, this time into a gas station, parked beside a pump, and waited. The sedan cruised past slowly, then turned into the parking lot across the street. It didn't park, just idled there, engine running, headlights still on. I couldn't see the driver. I thought about calling the police, but what would I even say? Someone's following me because of a family trust? It sounded insane. Instead, I called Mom. She picked up on the first ring. "Mom," I said, my voice shaking, "is Dad home?" There was a pause, too long. Then she said softly, "He just left. He said he needed to clear his head." My stomach dropped. I started the car and drove, not toward home, but toward the one place that still felt like mine, Grandpa's house. It was taped off, but I didn't care. I parked out back and ran up the porch steps, soaked from the rain. Inside, the air was thick with that same smell of dust and old wood. The power was still on. I turned on a lamp and closed the curtains, trying to breathe. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd lost whoever was following me. Then I heard tires crunching outside. Headlights swept across the windows. I ducked behind the couch, heart hammering. The front door creaked open. Slow, deliberate. I could hear wet footsteps on the floorboards. A man's voice said, "Emily?" It was Dad, but something about the way he said my name made me stay quiet. He stepped farther into the room, dripping water from his coat. "Sweetheart," he said softly. "You shouldn't have gone digging through his things." He sounded calm. Too calm. I stayed crouched behind the couch, clutching Grandpa's folder. "I know you've been talking to Ryan," he continued. "He doesn't understand how these things work. He thinks this is about money. It's not." His voice grew sharper. "It's about survival." I couldn't hold still anymore. I stood up, holding the folder like a shield. "What did you do, Dad?" He turned, his eyes catching the light. I'd never seen that look before. Not angry, not sad, just tired. "I saved this family," he said. "You think that company still exists?" "It's gone, Emily. It's been gone for years. I did what I had to do to keep us from losing everything. I shook my head. You used my name. You lied to all of us. He stepped closer. I gave you a future. No, I said. You gave me a target. For a second, something flickered in his expression. Guilt, maybe. But it vanished fast. You don't know what you've started, he said quietly. There are people who will come looking for that paperwork. They won't stop with you. I took a step back. Who? What people? He didn't answer. He just looked at the folder in my hands and said, Give it to me, Emily. Right now. I hesitated. That's when the second voice came from the doorway. Don't, Emily. Ryan was standing there, pale and shaky, still in hospital clothes. Dad's head snapped toward him. You shouldn't be here. Ryan stepped inside, eyes locked on him. Neither should you. The tension between them was electric, years of resentment crashing into one terrible moment. I realized then that no matter what I did, someone was going to lose everything, and I wasn't sure I wanted to save either of them. Ryan's voice cracked through the room like lightning, and for a second, no one moved. The three of us just stood there. Me clutching the folder, Dad with that cold, unreadable look on his face, and Ryan breathing hard like he was holding back years of rage. Dad was the first to speak. You should still be in the hospital. Ryan ignored him. You think I didn't notice the fake ledgers? The missing accounts? You stole the company and buried it under Emily's name because you couldn't stand to admit you lost control. Watch your tone, Dad said sharply. You have no idea what I've done to keep this family safe. Safe? Ryan's laugh was hollow. You lied to us for half our lives. You made her a shield and called it protection. Their words felt heavy, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I stepped between them, trembling. Stop it, both of you. Just tell me what's really going on. Dad turned to me. His voice softened in that way he always used when he wanted to sound reasonable. Sweetheart, there's no conspiracy here. Your grandfather started making deals that would have bankrupted us. I fixed it. I used your name to transfer assets before the government could take them. That's all. I shook my head. That's not all. The letter in the shed. Someone warned you years ago. Who wrote it? For the first time, he looked unsure. You found that? Who wrote it? I pressed. He hesitated, then said quietly, Your mother. Ryan's eyes widened. Mom? Dad sighed. She begged me to stop trusting your grandfather. He was reckless, Ryan. He thought his reputation would protect him from everything. I didn't sell the company out of greed. I sold it to keep us out of prison. The room went silent. I wanted to believe him, but something still didn't fit. Then why keep it secret? Why use me? He looked at me, his voice low. Because you were the only one he didn't watch. I could feel Ryan's anger boiling again. So all of this, the trust, the inheritance, the lies, it was just you covering yourself? Dad's jaw tightened. I did what I had to. You'd do the same if you understood what was at stake. But Ryan wasn't listening anymore. He turned toward me, eyes wild. Give me the papers, Emily. If he's telling the truth, we can prove it. We can show what he really did. Dad took a step forward. Don't you dare. Something in me broke then. All the years of trying to stay quiet, to stay neutral, to keep the peace. I couldn't do it anymore. I grabbed the folder and said, I'm done choosing between the two of you. Ryan reached for it. Dad reached for me. The folder slipped, papers scattering across the floor like snow. One page fluttered toward the fireplace, an old document with Grandpa's signature. It wasn't part of the trust or the will. Across the top, in faded ink, it read, Amendment of ownership, effective upon death of founder. Dad froze. His face went pale. Where did you get that? I bent down, scanning the lines. Grandpa hadn't just left me half the company. He'd reinstated full ownership. To me, alone. Dated 6 months before his death. Ryan saw it too. His voice cracked. He gave it all to her. Dad's composure finally cracked. That's not possible. But I could see it in his eyes. He already knew it was. He lunged forward, grabbing the page. Ryan moved faster, shoving him back. They stumbled against the coffee table, shouting. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the room. I grabbed the papers and ran. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the ground was slick. My shoes slid as I sprinted toward my car, heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Behind me, I could still hear them yelling. My father's threats, Ryan's rage. When I reached the car, I looked down at the papers in my hands. They were soaked, smudged, but legible. Grandpa had changed everything. He hadn't trusted Dad. He hadn't trusted Ryan. He'd only trusted me. I didn't know if that made me lucky or doomed. As I started the engine, my phone buzzed. A new text from an unknown number. You don't know who you're dealing with. Walk away before it's too late. I stared at the message for a long time, trying to breathe through the pounding in my chest. You don't know who you're dealing with. It didn't sound like Ryan. It didn't sound like Dad either. It was too detached, too careful. Whoever sent it wasn't panicking. They were warning me, or threatening me, maybe both. I turned off my phone and just drove. No destination, just miles of dark road and the sound of wet tires. My whole life had shrunk to a folder full of damp papers and too many secrets. I ended up parking in front of a 24-hour diner off the highway. Inside, everything smelled like burnt coffee and syrup. I slid into a booth in the back and spread out the pages, trying to dry them under the buzzing ceiling fan. The amendment Grandpa signed was clear. His name, my name, witnesses. But the line that caught my eye was the small print at the bottom. Filed with pending acquisition documents, Crawford Holdings, Denver office. That office had been closed for years. At least that's what Dad always said. I typed the address into my phone. It was only an hour away. By the time I got there, the sun was barely rising. The building looked abandoned. Windows dusty, sign half fallen. But there was a single light on inside, faint and yellow. I hesitated, then tried the door. It was unlocked. The air inside smelled like old paper and oil. My footsteps echoed across the empty floor. Rows of dusty filing cabinets lined the walls, each with faded labels. Most were empty. But one drawer in the back was newer, polished metal instead of rusted steel. It had a label taped over the original one. Private, EC. My initials. My hands were shaking as I pulled it open. Inside were folders, dozens of them, all stamped with my name. Some labeled investments, others trust extensions, transfer approvals, proxy signatures. I had never signed any of them. Every page looked legitimate. My signature, my ID, my supposed authorization. But none of it was real. Dad had forged everything. Years of paperwork that made me the legal owner of things I didn't even know existed. Behind me, the floor creaked. I turned fast. A man stood by the door, silhouetted against the dim light. Not Dad. Not Ryan. He looked older, dressed in a dark coat, his hair silver at the edges. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly. I didn't answer. My voice was gone. He stepped closer, eyes scanning the folders. You're Emily, right? I nodded slowly. I worked for your grandfather, he said. He told me that one day you might come here. My heart was pounding. He left me these? He gave a small nod. He wanted you to see the truth for yourself. Your father wasn't just protecting the family. He was protecting himself. The acquisition wasn't about losing money. It was about laundering it. He moved assets through your name to hide what he'd taken. I felt sick. Taken from who? He hesitated. From the investors. From the people who built this company long before your father. And if those people ever find out their money was hidden under your name, he didn't finish the sentence. I whispered, that text. Was it you? He shook his head. No, but whoever sent it knows you're digging too deep. I looked down at the folders again. What do I do? He exhaled slowly. Leave the papers here. Let me handle them. If you take them with you, they'll follow you. They already are. Something in his voice made my skin crawl. I couldn't tell if he was warning me or trapping me. I backed toward the door, clutching the folder tighter. I can't just walk away. His eyes darkened. Then you'll end up like your grandfather. I turned and ran. Outside, the morning light was pale and cold. I threw the folder into the passenger seat, started the car, and didn't look back. My phone buzzed again. Another message from that same unknown number. He's not who he says he is. Don't trust anyone from the company. I looked in the rearview mirror. The man from the office was standing in the doorway watching me, and behind him, through the glass, I could see someone else moving inside, someone I recognized. Dad. I didn't wait to see what my father would do. I drove until the building disappeared behind me, the road blurring through tears. I didn't even realize I was crying. The texts, the papers, the man in the coat, it all spun together until I could barely think. I ended up at a rest stop miles from anywhere. My phone had no signal. The air smelled like rain and gasoline. I sat there, staring at the folder on the seat next to me, wondering how my life had turned into this mess. Part of me wanted to burn it all, every document, every piece of proof, and just disappear. But Grandpa's voice kept echoing in my head. Don't blame yourself. Whatever happens next, you were only trying to do the right thing. I didn't feel like I was doing the right thing. I felt hunted. By afternoon, my phone finally reconnected, and a flood of missed calls came through. Mom, Ryan, unknown numbers, then one voicemail. Short, urgent. Emily, it's Ryan. I left the hospital. Dad knows about the files. He's not alone. You have to get out of Colorado, right now. My heart dropped. Not alone. I looked back down the highway. No cars behind me, just empty road. I threw the phone on the passenger seat and started the engine. As I pulled onto the interstate, something caught my eye. A white SUV in the side mirror. It kept the same distance no matter how fast I went. Maybe it was nothing. Or maybe this was how people disappeared. One small decision at a time. By the time I reached the state line, the gas light came on. I pulled into another station, forced myself to breathe, and called Ryan back. He answered on the second ring, voice hoarse. Where are you? Near the border. What's going on? I went through Dad's office, he said. He's been in contact with someone called Harlan & Co. for years. It's a holding firm, but it's fake. Shell accounts, ghost investors, all under your name. Grandpa must have found out, and that's why he changed the ownership to you. He was trying to pull the plug before Dad could use your name again. The pieces finally clicked, cold and jagged. So that's why he said it was about survival. He wasn't protecting us. He was protecting himself. Exactly, Ryan said. And if he's meeting with them now, they'll want one thing, the folder you have. They need to destroy it. I looked out at the SUV parked across the lot. The driver hadn't gotten out. I think they already found me. Listen, Ryan said quickly. Don't go to the police yet. If Dad still has friends inside the company, he has people everywhere. Go to Grandpa's cabin, the one in Red Pine. The files will be safe there until we can figure this out. The line went dead. I tossed the phone back onto the seat and looked at the highway sign. Red Pine, 42 miles. The SUV pulled out of the gas station a moment after I did. I drove as fast as I dared, the sky turning dark again. Every few minutes, the SUV's headlights flared in the mirror, reminding me it was still there. When I finally reached the dirt road leading to the cabin, I killed the headlights and coasted the last half mile in silence. The SUV didn't follow. The cabin looked exactly how I remembered it. Small, wooden, surrounded by trees so tall they blocked most of the moonlight. I used the spare key Grandpa kept under the porch step and slipped inside. Dust covered everything, but it felt like a safe place, or at least safer than anywhere else. I locked the door and set the folder on the kitchen table. For the first time in days, I let myself breathe. Then I saw something on the table that shouldn't have been there. A mug. Still warm. Before I could move, a voice came from the shadows near the hallway. Grandpa told me you'd come here. It wasn't Ryan. It wasn't Dad. It was Mom. I froze. The sound of her voice hit me harder than I expected. She stepped out of the shadows slowly, wearing the same coat she always wore to church, her hair damp from the rain. She looked older than I remembered, her eyes red, like she hadn't slept in days. Mom, I said, my voice barely a whisper. How did you find me? She gave a small, tired smile. You forget who packed your first suitcase, honey. You always run the same way. Far enough to think you're gone, but close enough to feel safe. I didn't move closer. You shouldn't be here, I know. She glanced at the folder on the table. That's what he's looking for. Dad? She nodded. He's been losing control for years, Emily. Your grandfather covered for him as long as he could. When the company started slipping, your father took deals he didn't understand. When those deals turned bad, he started moving the money. Your name was just the easiest way to hide it. I felt a wave of nausea. You knew, she flinched. I found out too late. By then, everything was already in your name. Your grandfather wanted to expose him, but that would have destroyed all of us. He changed the ownership instead, thought he could fix it quietly. I shook my head. You both let him use me. She looked at me like she wanted to argue, but instead she said softly, we were trying to protect you. From him, from what happens when powerful men panic. The air between us was thick with silence. She walked closer, slowly, her eyes never leaving the folder. Where's Ryan? On the run. He said Dad's not working alone. Her expression changed, a flicker of fear that she tried to hide. Then we don't have much time. She reached for the folder, but I stepped in front of it. You can't take this. It's the only proof I have. She sighed, hands trembling slightly. You think I want to hide it? No, Emily. I want to burn it before it gets you killed. Something outside creaked. A branch, or maybe a footstep. Her eyes darted to the window. Please, she whispered. They followed me here. My pulse spiked. Who? Before she could answer, headlights swept across the walls. 2 beams, 2 cars. Mom grabbed my arm. We have to go. Now. I hesitated, staring at the folder. If we leave it... She cut me off. If we stay, we don't leave at all. We ran out the back door and into the woods, the wet leaves slick beneath our shoes. Behind us, I heard car doors slam, men shouting. Mom pulled me toward a narrow trail that wound down toward the creek. Your grandfather built a shed there. It's got a hatch under the floor. He used to keep cash there for emergencies. We can hide until morning. I wanted to believe her, but something in my gut twisted. She was too calm, too certain. Mom, I said, gasping for breath. How did they find us? She didn't look back. Because he's tracking the car. I stopped running. She turned, realizing I wasn't following. Emily, we don't have time. You said he, I whispered. Not they. You mean Dad, don't you? Her face went pale. Sweetheart, please. We'll talk later. I took a step back. You didn't come here to help me. You came to bring me back. She shook her head violently, tears spilling down her cheeks. He promised he wouldn't hurt you if I found the papers first. The sound of engines got louder behind us. Mom reached for my hand, desperate. Please, Emily, give me the folder. We can still fix this. I stared at her, my mother shaking, terrified and lying, and realized there was no one left to trust, so I ran. Through the trees, down the muddy hill, my shoes slipping on roots and stones. I didn't stop until I reached the creek, the cold water rushing past my ankles. Behind me, voices shouted. A flashlight beam sliced through the darkness, and then one of them yelled my name, my father's voice. The sound of my father's voice tore through the woods. It wasn't a shout of worry. It was command, sharp, practiced, the kind of tone that didn't belong to a father calling his daughter, but to a man used to being obeyed. Emily, stop! I didn't. I ran faster, branches slapping against my arms, the cold creek water splashing up my legs. My lungs burned. Every breath felt like fire. When I reached the far side of the creek, I crouched low behind a fallen tree. Flashlights swept through the trees behind me. Too many. Not just my father. I pressed a hand to my mouth, trying not to breathe too loud. I could hear him closer now, talking to someone else. Spread out. She can't have gone far. His voice was calm, not angry. That scared me more than if he'd been yelling. The men fanned out, boots crunching against wet leaves. I stayed still, my heart pounding so hard I thought they'd hear it. Then something touched my shoulder. I almost screamed, but it was Ryan. He was soaked, limping, but alive. Come on, he whispered. They'll find you if we stay here. He led me deeper into the woods, toward the shed Mom had mentioned. When we reached it, the small structure looked like it could collapse any second. Ryan yanked the door open and pulled me inside. Are you okay? He asked. I nodded, still shaking. Mom's here. She brought them. His jaw tightened. I know. He's using her. He said if she didn't help, he'd make it look like she forged everything with him. I sank to the ground, clutching the folder to my chest. We can't keep running. Ryan crouched beside me, his voice low. Then we stopped hiding. He pulled a small flash drive from his pocket. Grandpa's files weren't just paper. He had digital backups. In the company's old server, I downloaded what I could before Dad shut it down. I looked at him, stunned. You had this the whole time? He nodded. I wanted to make sure you were safe first. But once they find us, it won't matter unless someone outside the family sees it. He opened the hatch in the floor, revealing a small metal box. Inside was an old satellite phone and a bundle of cash, wrapped in rubber bands. Grandpa really had prepared for everything. Take the phone, Ryan said. Drive east. There's a reporter in Denver named Laura Haynes. Grandpa trusted her once. Said she was the only one who'd listen if something ever happened to him. I shook my head. What about you? I'll slow them down. Ryan. He cut me off with a faint smile. You always said I thought I was the hero. Guess I finally get to be one. He pushed me toward the back door. Outside, the rain had started again. Soft and cold. I hesitated, looking back at him. Please, don't do anything stupid, he smirked. Too late. I ran, the folder under my arm, the drive hidden in my pocket. Behind me, I heard shouting. My father's voice again, closer this time. Then a crash. The sound of wood splintering. I didn't look back. I just ran until the forest thinned and the dirt road appeared ahead. My car was still there, thank God. I started it and sped off, tires slipping on the mud. In the rearview mirror, orange light flickered through the trees. Fire. The shed was burning. My hands shook on the wheel. I didn't know if Ryan had escaped or if he'd started it himself. All I knew was that my father's shadow was still out there, and that the truth had finally caught up to all of us. The phone in my pocket buzzed once. A text from an unknown number. Run east. You have 1 hour before they realize you're gone. It wasn't signed. But I knew who sent it. Mom. I didn't stop driving until the forest turned into open highway, and the mountains faded behind me. Every time a car appeared in the mirror, my stomach knotted. I kept expecting headlights to flash twice, some kind of signal, and for everything to end right there. By dawn, I hit Denver. The sky was a dull gray and the city looked half asleep. I pulled into a diner parking lot and used the satellite phone. The screen was old, the keys stiff, but the number still worked. Laura Haynes, I said when she answered. You don't know me, but my grandfather did. There was a pause. Then, calm and alert. What's your name? Emily Crawford. Another silence. Then a soft exhale. I was wondering when one of you would call. She told me to meet her in an hour at a coffee shop near Union Station. She said to bring whatever I had, and to make sure no one followed me. When I walked in, she was already there, early 40s, hair tied back, a press badge still clipped to her coat. She looked like someone who'd seen too many people lie to her. I sat down and slid the flash drive across the table. This belonged to my grandfather. She didn't touch it right away. And you think it's connected to his death? I nodded. He said my father made choices he couldn't undo. He warned me not to trust anyone from the company. Now he's gone. And my brother, I swallowed hard. My brother might be dead. Her eyes softened, just slightly. Do you have proof of what your father did? On that drive. And in here. I held up the folder. It shows he used my name to hide illegal transfers, maybe years' worth. She finally took the drive, plugging it into her laptop. Lines of data scrolled across the screen. Transactions, account numbers, shell companies. Her expression changed. Emily, this isn't small. These are federal funds. Your father moved money through dummy contracts tied to defense projects. If this gets out, it won't just ruin him. It'll take down half the people who signed off on those deals. I felt the blood drain from my face. So that's why they're after me. She nodded. Because on paper, it's all you. Every dollar. If this comes out, they'll need a scapegoat. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. A text. Ryan's gone. He didn't make it out. I didn't realize I was shaking until Laura put her hand over mine. Emily, look at me. You can still survive this, but you can't keep running alone. I forced a breath. What do we do? She started copying the files. I'll encrypt everything. Send it to a contact I trust in DC. If anything happens to you or me, it'll go public. All of it. I nodded, numb. Then she frowned at her screen. Wait. What? She turned the laptop so I could see. One of the folders on the drive wasn't a financial file. It was a video, time-stamped 2 weeks before Grandpa's death. She clicked play. The image was grainy, filmed in his study. Grandpa sat at his desk, looking older than I remembered but clear-eyed, focused. If you're watching this, Emily, he said, then your father has found the papers. You need to understand what I did to protect you. But there's one thing I couldn't hide. He wasn't working alone. The man funding him is still inside Crawford Holdings. His name is... The video froze. The rest was static. Laura hit the keyboard, trying to restart it, but it was gone. The file corrupted. We sat in silence, the hum of the coffee shop fading into nothing. Then Laura said quietly, that name, whoever he was about to say, that's who killed your grandfather. Before I could answer, the windows at the front of the shop flashed with light, headlights, stopping fast. 2 black SUVs. Laura looked up, her face hardening. They found us. The headlights washed across the cafe windows, blinding for a moment. Everyone inside turned their heads, assuming someone had just parked badly, but Laura knew better. Her posture changed instantly, calm, efficient, the kind of calm that only comes from experience. Emily, she said quietly, already closing her laptop, don't look at them. Take your bag and go out the back. What about you? I'll buy you 30 seconds. My chest tightened. Laura, go! I grabbed the folder and the drive, shoving them into my jacket pocket, and followed her toward the kitchen. She brushed past the barista, dropped a 20 on the counter, and said something about a power surge as she pulled the back door open. The alley behind the cafe smelled like wet asphalt and trash. I started running, my shoes slipping against the pavement. Behind me, I heard the crash of the front door swinging open, men shouting, boots on tile. Laura had gone the other way. I didn't look back. The alley opened onto a narrow side street, then another. I cut between parked cars until I reached an underpass that reeked of oil and rainwater. My breath came in ragged gasps. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the same unknown number. North entrance, train depot. You have 2 minutes. I didn't think. I just ran. The old depot wasn't far. A massive brick building with flickering lights and trains idling in the distance. I slipped through a side door just as thunder cracked overhead. Inside, the noise of engines and rain drowned everything else out. Rows of freight cars sat in the dim light, some open, others sealed. And then I saw him. Ryan. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. He looked pale, worn, a bandage still wrapped around his head, but alive. He raised a hand. You're late. I ran to him, half laughing, half crying. I thought you were dead. He gave a tired smile. So did they. The fire bought me time. Before I could say anything, headlights from inside the depot flared. Another car. Doors opened. Dad stepped out. Ryan moved in front of me instinctively. How did you... Dad cut him off. You should have listened to me, son. His voice wasn't shouting now. It was calm, almost sad. You don't understand who you're fighting. Laura appeared behind him, her hands raised. He's right, she said, looking at me. You need to hear this before you make it worse. For a second, I didn't know whose side she was on. Dad glanced at her. Did you tell her? Laura's expression hardened. You already told enough lies. You might as well finish it. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Emily, your grandfather didn't die of a heart attack. He was poisoned. Not by me, by the man who financed those deals. His name is Mark Harlan. The same one behind Harlan & Co. The name hit me like ice water. He's real? Dad nodded. Very real. And he's not just after the money. He wants the ownership papers. The ones with your signature. If he gets them, he controls everything. The company, the assets, everything our family ever built. Ryan scoffed. And you expect us to believe you didn't help him? Dad's voice cracked for the first time. I tried to stop him, Ryan. That's why your grandfather changed the documents. He knew Harlan would use me to get to Emily. The echo of boots on concrete cut him off. Figures moved between the train cars, dark shapes with flashlights. Dad turned to us, desperation in his eyes. They're already here. Give me the drive and I can end this. No, I said. You've lied too many times. Emily, please. You think you're safe with that reporter? Harlan owns half the city. The only way to survive is to give it back. Ryan stepped closer, his voice low. Or we make it public. I pulled the drive from my pocket and handed it to Laura. You said you had a contact in D.C.? Send it. She nodded, typing fast on her laptop. The sound of boots grew louder. One of the flashlights swept across us. Dad whispered, Emily? A gunshot cracked through the depot. Sparks flew from a metal beam beside us. Laura ducked, clutching her laptop. Ryan grabbed my arm, pulling me behind a freight car. When I looked back, Dad was on the ground, blood blooming through his sleeve. Laura yelled, Keep your head down, and hit send. A second later, her screen flashed, upload complete. The shouting stopped. Then another sound. Sirens, close and getting louder. Laura turned to me, her face pale but determined. It's done. The story's gone out. Ryan helped Dad to his feet. He was bleeding but alive. He looked at me, something like relief, or regret, crossing his face. You shouldn't have done that, he whispered. You don't know what you've started. Outside, police lights painted the depot in red and blue. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't running anymore. But the look in my father's eyes told me the truth. This wasn't the end. It was just the moment everyone finally saw who we really were.